it twice.
Okay.
There's one right there. See, it says got it.
Dave, now that you're here, I'm just gonna hit the go live in case anything happens.
Sure.
That's fine with everyone.
Oh, Lord.
Dave,
Take care.
it never gave me the option to not have the chat underneath.
You got no directions. You gotta go to
Edit video.
the video.
Okay, here we are. Settings.
Kevin, are you able to scroll through there to see what you wanted to see?
I'm getting there. Yeah.
Okay. No problem, buddy.
I'm trying to only touch one key, two keys.
You're fine. I'm so vaccinated, it's not funny.
Well, me too. Me too. Yeah,
Yeah, if
all
I
I
get
can
one
do
more
now
vaccination, I'm
is
gonna be-
spread it.
I have my booster, yeah.
Yeah, I got all that. All I can do is spread it, not knowing I have it, and spread it to somebody. That's the only.
You get it?
I got the booster, I got the flu shot, I got the shingle shot, I'm a pinprick.
I haven't got my shingle yet. I need to do that.
Oh, you need to do that. A friend of mine just got it.
Oh, yeah, I got all
Whole
that.
face like this and went over his eye and his ear, and they said he could have gone blind. It was huge. It was just terrible.
I just haven't had a chance, but I'm of the age now, where I'm supposed to, get that.
Let me tell you, I got myself out there and got one after I looked at him. He lasted 2 weeks and then he said he was in severe pain the next week. It was terrible. It's terrible.
It's supposed to be really
It
painful.
was horrible. And then he had this big scab on his head and he worked at Habitat for Humanity. People were probably terrified to get near him because he really looked contagious of something that, you wouldn't want to get.
Oh, I use this as a camera.
Dave?
Yep.
I hit live chat. I unchecked it, then just hit save, but nothing else happened. So I'm assuming that is on.
You're good.
Okay, thank you.
You just gotta do a record for your minutes.
It remind you to come. That's what I do. I had mine remind me.
Yeah, it reminded me.
That's what I did.
All right, you're on. That's good.
Okay.
See you later.
Thanks, Dave.
Because usually not like me, you're not used to running out of the house at
Congratulations.
20 till 7.
I'm sorry to see you go, but I can't begrudge anyone retiring. How old are you now?
I'm 52.
How much?
52.
Wow, you're retiring early. But you had a retirement or something else.
City, please.
Yeah. You just kind of ready to
Yeah,
enjoy
I'll talk to you after I leave.
Oh, stop.
See, the minute I leave, it'll all go haywire.
Yeah, I know.
See, at Carroll Community College, they give me my own tech kid. And then if he wasn't there, every kid in the place knows how to do it because they're all kids. They all know how to fix it.
Well, Andrew, who's that server? Who does the cable? Carroll County, what group is that?
19.
Yeah, that works with the Mayor County Council for their meetings?
CMC?
CMC. So the hope is we coordinated with them for the equipment in the new room over to the administration building. So the equipment is what they would typically use, and the hope is that they would come to planning commission meetings too and run that from their location. But
Why aren't we using it now? Does it not work yet?
the basement, yeah, there's no cameras in there. We have the TVs, but a lot of the visual equipment isn't there. So that's why.
God, what can you get for $1 gazillion? They gotten everything wrong.
Dave's that's trying to get it, the
Yeah.
equipment, the government, how it works.
I'm still trying to get 2 windows for my house. My contractor put in single pane windows in this little house and now he's having trouble getting them.
The laptops that he ordered are 6 months to come in.
Oh, wow.
It's just Dell, but still.
My frames for my art shop, I'm down 2/3 of them. I don't know what's going to happen if they don't get some too. There's one other company gets some, but I don't think they're doing much better.
Yeah.
So I have a whole bunch of frames in the basement, a lot of big ones. I have them cut down. I'll just send them back to them and say, make them. Right now I'm going, okay, these, see if you like these. This is why this one will look really good on your picture. This one.
I used to do that, by the way.
Did you?
When I was younger, I worked for MJ Design. I was the framing department manager, and I also did the framing and mats and
Oh,
all that fun stuff.
so if you need some extra work, you can pop up and help people pick out mats.
I'm sure you get it too. People come in and say, well, my drapes are red, so I really want to have a mat that's red that matches the drape and things like that, or furniture.
And they bring you an orange picture.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, no, that's not what you do. It's it's for the picture, not for. Yeah,
I interview them as to what their house looks like and I try to make it match as closely as possible, but I never, ever try to encourage them to one thing if they're a little iffy, because they won't inevitably come back 2 weeks later and say, you talked me into this.
yep.
I just, it's your decision.
They say try to talk them out that way. They say, no, I want it my way. Well, that way I can say, well, I tried. So when you see it, when it's done,
Every now and then,
you understand exactly what I was talking about.
my shop manager will be putting something together and she'll look at me and I go, I did not pick that out.
Hello, Mr. Hackett.
I'd say it's fun. It's fun working with people and doing that work.
Yeah, we make prints for artists though, and explaining a proportion is almost impossible.
Yeah.
I finally actually figured out a way. I took the girl's picture and I laid it on top of an 8x10. And I said, see, it won't do that. I can't stretch it. It will not do that.
So yeah, when they try to fit it into the certain frame, yeah.
Well, she says, well, the artist online sells on standard, sell all standard sizes. I said, did you paint on 11 by 14 piece of paper? No, you get a little scrap of paper and you paint it on it. And now it's not going to be, I've been round and round with the one. And she wants to put things online. She doesn't understand computers. She doesn't have a printer. So I sent her out to Carroll Community College to take some classes.
Yeah.
Go out
That's a
there.
good idea.
I said, I thought Burke would help her, but
Just to let you know, we are streaming live on Facebook. Or sorry, live on YouTube.
Talking about picture
Live
framing.
on YouTube right now.
Well, people are learning about picture framing. It's an extra bonus that you get that we're offering.
sure there are lines of people waiting to watch this.
Yes. Hi, Clark, how you doing?
Hey, Richard, how
Clark,
are you? Hey, Lindy.
hey.
Hey, Kevin.
Hey,
Hi.
Hi, Clark, how are you?
Good. Marty, how you doing? Good. There's nothing good on TV tonight. Everybody had to come here.
This is it.
Andrew,
Andrew's on TV.
Andrew's on TV.
I got stopped
Oh, Andrew's on
and from
TV?
going through a cross, and who comes by but this one and laughs at me? I still keep driving down the one street and can't find the crosswalk he said I went through. Remember that when you told me the police stopped me? I've never been stopped by the police. So I'm stopped. It has to be in
That's a
down.
likely
It
story.
has to be in downtown Westminster in front of Johansson's. It can't be somewhere else at 8:30 in the morning. So everybody knows driving by.
Oh, I did see you there.
And he walks by laughing.
I thought it was a drug bust.
Oh,
Hello, Mr. Schaefer. How are you?
Good.
where's your snazzy red vest you had on last night? He had a red vest
I
last
decided not
night
to go
and a
too far.
pepper. He had a tie with peppermints on it. He's looking
I was
very
working the
snazzy.
Christmas angle.
Yeah, he was. He was looking good.
I was working the Christmas angle.
Looked like it was a good event, Dan.
At the chamber?
Yep.
That was a good event.
Oh, don't get Andrew going on that.
No.
Would he want to come?
You know, we didn't get an invite to the chamber this year, staff, so.
Well, about half as many people they let come. There were a lot of people.
I tell you what, if you don't sign up for that early too, you don't get in.
You send them an email in July and say, I'm signing up for the Christmas party.
Yeah.
Well, I got one because I was on the board of directors, and that's the only reason I got one. And then Ann didn't get in.
You good?
So I went in and I introduced her as my husband. Because I said, my husband didn't want to go anyway. You can be Jim.
Mr. Chair, it is 7:00.
all right, we'll bring the meeting to order. First live meeting in, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years, I'm not sure. But I guess we'll have to remind everyone to kill their cell phones. So
Mm.
this has been a long time since you had to worry about that. First item on the agenda is approval of 2 sets of minutes from November 11th and November the 18th. So you want to do November 11th first. That was the actual commission meeting.
I'll make a motion for approval.
I second.
All right, it's been moved second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, now the minutes from November 18th, the Thursday special session.
Make a motion to approve that.
I will second, even though I wasn't here. So,
All right, it's been moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
aye.
All right, all the minutes have been approved. Next item for business is the Stonegate Section 4. Mr. Gray, are you or is?
Yes, sir. And can the commission see my screen? The slideshow?
Yes.
All right. All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the proposed plat for Stonegate Section 6. This is the final plat for Section 6, for the Stonegate development, which is located out off of Old Westminster Pike. The applicant is requesting the record plat approval to create 21 new single-family detached residential lots and 2 parcels. One parcel is the circle in the middle of one of the roadways, and parcel V is for the open space area. For staff comments, this plat does comply with the revised preliminary plan for the Nagata property. The landscaping, design and review was addressed previously by the commission. North Chandler Drive to Pool Road, Redwood Drive to Woodside Drive, and Kent Terrace to Woodside Drive connections identified on the preliminary plan shown to the right on red have not been made to date. The preliminary plan is what is shown on the screen on the right-hand side. The 2 connections in green have been made and the 3 have not been made to date. Discussing with the police department and the Westminster Volunteer Fire Department about 2 years ago, the fire department mentioned that it would be convenient for them. The police department this go around, they were the ones that got back to me and mentioned that the connection to Woodside Drive would definitely be convenient for them from a public safety standpoint. Between the time of the preliminary plan, which was 2015, to now, there was more than enough adequate time for the developer to work out the ownership issue with the county. And the commission will have definitely wanted to bring this to the commission's attention, because after today, the commission will have no other input in any of Stonegate. And that is the reason that we bring this to you all today. The recommendation is planning staff recommends that the commission consider conditional approval of the proposed final plat F1880 for Stonegate Section 6 with the 2 following conditions. Confirm all adjacent property owners are up to date. If any properties are owned by a new buyer, please revise those properties accordingly. And number 2, provide a roadway connection from the Stonegate development to Woodside Drive. Mr. Chair, I am here if you have any questions, and also the developer and designer are in attendance as well. Thank you.
All right. I guess first, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Gray before we let?
So I guess my question for Mr. Gray is, so the preliminary plan, from my understanding, had 5 connections, correct? Proposed.
That is correct.
I just, and I kind of read through the report, but I just would kind of like a little bit more commentary from you, that your recommendation, you're fine without the connection that's off of North Chandler, I believe it is, and off of Kent Terrace, not proceeding forward, correct? Obviously, North Chandler, I don't, that property is undeveloped next to it, so I don't know where that would go anyway.
That is correct, Commissioner.
Okay, so Mr. Gray, your concern is regarding the connection to from Redwood to Woodside.
That is correct.
Okay. And what kind of comments have we had related to from the county? Because obviously that subdivision is in the county. has this whole issue been discussed with the county as well?
It has, Commissioner Huff. The county also agreed with our comments about having a connection to that development. Currently, the Kent Terrace connection, there is private property. The Dolls own what that right of way would be.
I'm
But
familiar with it. There's that triangle piece that the Woodside subdivision doesn't, I think it's called Woodside, if I remember correctly, doesn't actually touch Stonegate at that area because there's a small sliver of a triangle there. Is that not correct?
that is correct.
Okay. So the county is okay with that not proceeding forward on Kent Terrace, but they're in agreement that they would want the Woodside connection. Is that what you're telling me?
They are in agreement that there should be some sort of connection on connecting to Woodside Terrace. Woodside Drive. And
Okay.
the Redwood Drive connection would be the easiest connection to make.
Okay. Okay, I guess that's all the questions I have for right now. Obviously, we'll hear from the applicant with
But I
their
could
thoughts.
have one, I understand the three connections that weren't put in, but was it? I'm thinking that possibly one of them wouldn't have been expected to have been put in because it was a road to nowhere. Is that correct? The one on the end, I guess, so to speak, would that be? Whereas the other two would be actually roads into another development?
Vice Chair Beaver, are you referring to the one where my cursor is over?
Yes.
That is North Chandler. That would actually connect to Chandler. That was not proposed to be connected by the developer.
Okay,
There's
that was my point, yeah.
on these.
What the reason it wasn't is because it's an undeveloped piece next door to it. So, you know, typically that next property, I'm assuming that road has been built to approximately the property line. And then when the other developer comes in next is when that connection would be made.
Correct.
Which is different than the other two connections at Kent and at Redwood because the development is already done next door to it.
Correct.
It's inherently, what my point is, the connection to North Chandler is inherently a totally different situation than the other two connections because one is going to an undeveloped property, the other is going to a property that's already been developed.
Yes, you are correct, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, that was what I was trying to get clear. So in reality, there were four, in the impression from the city is there were four connections that they were expecting to have made when this development was finished. Is that what you're saying? You couldn't really make the fifth one because it was.
I mean, at any time you're doing a subdivision plan, you want to show potential connections. And as Councilmember Huff pointed out, when it's undeveloped, the thought is when that does develop out with the development, with residential development, commercial, we will look at that right away there. But the North Chandler and the Kent Terrace, by the preliminary plan, does make the statement that that connection will be by others. So there was a thought at the time of preliminary plan, there was difficulty with those two connections, as has been pointed out. But the Redwood connection, Redwood Drive, it states the contractors to tie into the existing pavement of Woodside Drive and the smooth line and grade. So at the preliminary plan stage, it was envisioned that Redwood Drive, and I'm guessing because it does seem to be the easiest of the connections, was
So there's
anticipated.
really only one of the three.
Oh, on the preliminary plan, there's actually a note that says the contractor to tie into existing paving in smooth line and grade. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, so there was
Okay.
clearly an understanding, at least I would believe that the Redwood Drive was going to happen with the Stonegate development, that the other two, if
Okay,
possible,
that's what
would
I was trying
happen
to
in
get
the future
clear.
by others.
So there was no note regarding the other two on the preliminary plan.
Yeah, the notes say that it will be done. by
Future
others.
extension of Kent Terrace by others. I'm looking at your staff report on what was, and the preliminary plan is prepared, obviously prepared by the developer, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Any other questions from the city
Okay.
before we let? Whichever.
I'm going to
Mr.
start off.
Okay.
Start.
Marty Hackett with CLSI. We're going to go through a quick,
Papers, I love papers.
yeah. Revised the preliminary plan that was approved and signed off by the city of Westminster in 2015. Just to understand, there were 3 connections proposed during the preliminary plan process and preparing this plan. It was basically the one that takes us over into the existing community off of Pool Road.
And that one, just to be clarified, that's already in.
That's
That's
it.
done.
That's
Okay.
the roundabout area, the main access to our site, the Redwood Drive connection. This connection was only to be built to the property line, basically as much as you can physically grade it in there and all that with the slopes. And then same thing goes with the property line as it gets extended through a couple other properties to Pool Road ultimately. Okay?
Okay.
The-
Mr. Hackett, just to clarify, and this preliminary plan was approved by the county and the city back in 2015.
That's correct. And you got all the signatures there.
Right,
This is
okay.
a signed drawing.
Gotcha.
Okay? And this future extension of Terrace by others, so everybody's in agreement, these two.
Gotcha.
This piece, Redwood Drive, we went through and did sections 3 through 6 on final construction plans. We did all the final engineering. And when our original drawings showed, my apologies here, I've been trying to get.
Well, let me cut to the chase here, Marty. So here we are. We're talking about the Redwood Terrace connection, right?
Sure.
They're
Redwood Drive.
suggesting Redwood Drive that you condition this approval on that connection being made. And they're citing you to the preliminary plan that
Yeah.
says the connection will be made. Well, here's something that has not been mentioned so far. That on Thursday, March 12th, 2020, the Planning Commission had a meeting. And there was a staff report presented to the Planning Commission in connection with Stonegate. And it talked about the Redwood connection. And at that meeting, it was decided that the Redwood connection would not be required because the property's not owned by the developer. It's not part of an adjacent already developed property. It's part of the we think it's part of the Dahl estate, Clifford Dahl or
The
Dahl.
Redwood Drive connection goes into Walnut Ridge.
Yeah, it goes into Walnut Ridge.
There's a couple things. We don't own the property, the county doesn't own the property, and the city doesn't own the property. It goes back to the original owner of Scotty Bear, and then sold it to Cliff, that entity sold it to Cliff Dahl years ago. So the estate of Cliff Dahl owns the property. And the county agrees with us, we agree with it, we found it. At the meeting Clark's referring to, we went ahead and discussed it with the planning commission. They approved us to move forward without making the connection. Subsequently, and
And
Mr. Gray's,
here's the minutes of the meeting.
Mr. Gray's,
And the staff report is attached to that.
okay, hold on. This is the red line that was prepared. As his staff report said, they agreed that we would put a T turnaround here and set it up that if anybody wants to build this in the future, somebody can do that if they get control over it.
In other words, it was no longer.
Okay, hold, don't let everybody talk over top of each other. So, yeah. Okay, so this was a red line that was done when this part of the section 4 was approved, correct?
Afterwards.
After
We
this
came in
meeting.
about a year and a half, and whatever the date is of that. We came in because we realized we were trying to get section 4 plats approved. And we said, we're supposed to make the time, but we can't. We don't own the land, we don't control anything, the county doesn't. And the planning commission agreed that we would do the red line and show the T turnaround, is what we did. We have a set of plans, not just preliminary plans. We have a set of plans that are, and I'll show you. I did not bring all 111 sheets of this construction. It's a big project. Here. This is the cover sheet for our construction plans, final engineer construction plans.
For these sections.
for sections 3 through 6,
Okay.
all signed by the mayor, Department of Public Works, the planning, everyone. And that was done on 19. This red line came in afterwards, because originally, like I said, originally, we did that and then realized there's title issues and control issues with that segment of land. And that's when the planning commission went ahead and agreed and approved to terminate it here and not require that connection. That means we still have 2 of the 3 original connections. If you look, and I'll just show you a bird's eye view of this section, the main entrance to the community, plus this other section. Off of here, there's about 65 lots roughly, I recall. Access is safe. There's many, many, many locations in the city of Westminster, Carroll County, Maryland, and everywhere where there's a single point of access that access 65 units or more, or 100, whatever. So it's not a matter of safety. Originally, the police department and the fire department said it'd be nice, but it was okay. And that's why the planning commission went with not making a connection. And that's why we're here
In
tonight.
March of 2020.
Right.
And the staff report, which is attached to that supported that decision, it says, after specifically addressing this issue, whether Redwood Drive should be connected, it said, well, among other things, in the future, if it is determined that this future connection is to be made, it will be built by whomever desires to make this future connection, others. Okay. And then as a result of that staff report and a discussion at the March 20th meeting at which this specific issue was discussed, the motion was made and the decision was made that that connection would not be required as part of the approval of this subdivision.
Were you reading from the staff report?
So
Yes.
So
Okay,
what
not
I
the
would like
minutes of the
to,
meeting.
what I would
No,
like
he's
to
got the
do,
minutes, yeah.
Chair, is I would like to take a 10-minute break because they've submitted something that I have not read that I would like us all to have an opportunity to read. So I would like to make a motion that we just take a 10-minute break so we can actually read. That's what I would like to do.
I've got that yellow and I've got extra copies.
Yeah, if you got extra copies, that's
So
great.
this is the part where the motion was made and then the staff report is attached to it.
Oh, okay. So I'm gonna make a motion that we take a 10-minute or a small break so we can all read through what's been submitted by the applicant.
Second.
Yeah.
All in favor? Aye. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, let's read through this.
All right. Take a second break.
Yep.
I will be back to read. Oh, a little more room there.
Sorry.
That's good.
Did the neighbors come into that hearing and say we don't want this connection?
That was back to preliminary plan
That
stage.
was back to the plan plan stage.
It's there.
Don't comment, let's just read it. Comment. This is the staff report that was underlying this meeting.
Yes, and in fact,
Okay.
Mr. Gray quotes a good portion of that in.
Well, yeah, we're not, wait till we get, wait till we get, just wanted to clarify that, make that right then. Okay.
I see about the temporary T-turn, how would they call it temporary? That's what I'm trying to figure out. I was at the meeting.
You don't have the staff report, you just have the. I think,
No, I looked at this.
here it is. Here's the staff report.
What the- Oh, okay. Okay.
Here's the staff report. Once you're done reading, what? Mr. Schaefer, is this something I can keep?
Sure.
Okay.
And Mr. Schaefer, can you make sure staff has one so we have one for the record?
Well, I see is the recommendation. Where's the discussion about this temporary turnaround?
This is the minutes from the meeting.
Yeah, I saw it. Oh, yeah.
Okay, and then this is the staff report
Yeah,
that was addressed in this meeting.
right. Is that what you, that's what this is, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
All I see is the recommendation.
Yeah.
See any discussion about the
Yeah.
T turnaround?
What, here,
No,
look
not
at this
that,
copy.
not
This-
that. That was us.
Okay, you already, so
I
that's the
meant
minutes.
in the written.
Read this part.
Oops. Oh, okay. There it is.
That's staff's comments at the
I was
time.
looking for a T.
And then whenever you're ready, we can
All right.
reconvene. I just wanted to do it this way so we can actually read and digest, because I hate reading stuff in the middle of a active meeting. Should have highlighted all the copies.
Okay.
Okay, you want to call the meeting back?
Yes, let's call the meeting back to order, and if you'll still have the
Mr. Schaefer.
So
floor.
to me, it's a simple question. And I will say that I find it disturbing that this staff report was not highlighted by the today's staff report, although it's quoted in there, but I don't think it's quoted. It's very clear from this document, the March 2020 Planning Commission staff report and decision, that connection was eliminated. The requirement that this developer make that connection was eliminated. If it is determined that this future connection is to be made, it will be built by whomever desires to make this future connection. That's others. That's a well-known term in subdivision approvals. Others means not the developer. Okay, somebody else will do it. That means, like you know, either somebody that develops the Dahl property, the property in between, or some other developer. So anyway, it's crystal clear that this planning commission eliminated that requirement. So now the question becomes, staff tonight is recommending that you retract, essentially, without saying it. They're recommending that you retract that decision and make a condition of approval of section 6 that connection be made, which means reverse your decision. Now, the next question is, and I'm not even going to get into the question of, can this happen? I don't know. It's a new one to me. 40 years of planning and zoning law in Carroll County. Never seen this come up before. I don't even know if you have the authority to do it if you wanted to. But, and I think it's questionable because there's appeal period. These are final things. People rely on these approvals. Developers, they rely on this stuff. This is a big deal. As you well know, it's a big deal to get these preliminary plans approved and to get these things taken off. But let's assume that you do have the authority, if you wanted to say, you know what, forget it, Mr. Developer. We're changing our mind. The question I have is, on what basis? What has staff presented to you today as a reason to change your mind? Has there been a catastrophic event? Has there been a change in traffic? Has there, I mean, March 2020 is what, a little more than a year ago? What has changed between then and now, which would justify you saying to a developer, we're changing our mind, now you have to make that connection, by the way, over land you don't own, okay? Over land you don't own. Now, I'll now jump into the practicalities a little bit. Yeah, have you ever been in a situation, maybe you have, maybe you haven't, where you go to your neighbor and you go, in order for me to get approval to do this on my property, the government said I have to get 20 feet, I have to get 5 feet of your land. Oh, really? Says your neighbor. Really? Well, what is that project you're going to do on your land? Oh, well, I'd be very interested in it because it may affect, number one, whether I'm willing to give you the 5 feet, sell it to you. And number two, how much I'm going to charge you for it. That is why the governments in general have been reluctant to require developers to acquire also. Now, sometimes you have to.
Well, Mr. Schaefer, let me kind of refocus the energy because I feel like we're kind of going in a couple different directions here. I think there's multiple issues here. Is, you know, the issue of whether Redwood should connect to Woodside is an issue, okay? And we could sit here and debate that. But I thought the point that you were initially trying to make is that as part of the approval process of this section, which you provided us documentation for, that you feel like that the Planning Commission already had, and I was not there for that Planning Commission meeting,
Right.
not here, not on Planning Commission at that point in time. The Planning Commission already had a bite at the apple at that point in time. And at that point in time, chose not to require that connection. And the staff report says in it, in the future, if it is determined that this future connection is to be made, it will be built by whoever desires to make this future connection. I thought the point that we're trying to make here, or that you're trying to make on behalf of your applicant, is that in essence, the Planning Commission already had a bite at the apple at this point in time, and to come back at this point to readdress that is what you have a problem with. Because I could make an argument that that connection should go through. I've done development work where I've had to deal with other people's properties or demonstrate that I made a good faith effort to negotiate a resolution with the neighboring property. I had to do that down at Statewood Farm with Mr. Hackett should be aware of, and I had to put money up for the future of it being done. So that's a totally different issue. I think the main focus is the feeling that this had already been priorly addressed and already been decided on at a previous point in time. Mr. Hackett?
Just to add a little bit, yeah, we felt that we went in that previous meeting. We got the approvals that we needed to move forward with the rest of the job. We're down to the last 20 couple lots. I went section 6, and my client, Richard Kress, relied upon that to move forward. To the so where we've built that road segment and put the T turnaround. It's physically there. We built that, assuming that we weren't making that connection. So we were, obviously we're well on our way and thought we had approved preliminary plans and approved construction documents in final form and all the approvals necessary to finish the project. So it just came a little by surprise, and we're asking the commission to approve our plats to move forward without the road connection still and reaffirm that.
Okay, because you don't feel that it's fair to revisit that particular issue, because Redwood is not part of this particular section. And it's already been, your feeling is that based off of this from 2020, that's already been addressed and determined by the planning commission that it was a temporary, what do they call it? I'm used to temporary cul-de-sac, but same theory. Yeah.
And it's temporary. It's called temporary as a T turnaround because it could be temporary. It could be 20 years until somebody maybe builds that road segment and gets control over it. That's all. It's called a temporary turnaround.
Right.
Just out of curiosity, not that I think it particularly matters, but I'm just kind of curious. The plat for Woodside, it's called Woodside. Is that correct, Mr.
No, it's Walnut Ridge.
Walnut Ridge, thank you.
Woodside Drive.
Okay, Walnut Ridge. The plat, I'm assuming, shows that, just as I've seen on other old plats where they used to reserve the area for that future road to go through. But I'm assuming something broke down in that process and it never got properly conveyed.
That's correct.
Is that what happened?
The deed for the road bed never got conveyed to the county as it should have back then. And that occurrence
to the property line. That's
so technically when Cliff Dahl bought the remaining lands of the estate of Scotty Bear, the late Scotty Bear, he bought everything, and that's one of them. And
because it never
Cliff Dahl has since passed as well. So anyway, it's pretty convoluted.
Understand. And I just for the benefit of the rest of the planning commission, having done some development work in my past life, I have seen that very situation where you have with a paper street and then it never gets conveyed over. And really it should be conveyed over, but it never did. So that's the complication that you were running into.
Correct.
But again, I think the major point you're trying to make here is that Planning Commission already had the opportunity to require that or somehow require that back in 2020 and did not take that action.
That was even for section 4. And we even came in front of them again in section 5 and it was never brought any further. Where it's a couple sections later where it's coming up at the last minute.
Do you guys have anything to add to that?
No, I think.
No. Does anyone else have any questions?
No.
I think we should give staff an opportunity to comment if they would like.
Yes, please.
Okay, couple of things. The second bite of the apple, I'm not sure if that's the appropriate terminology. The development's not completed, otherwise we wouldn't be here today. They need additional approvals. I'd agree if all record plats were approved and they were out and they were submitting for building permits only, it would be difficult for us to say, ask for it that point. I think we still have the ability to ask for it. Walnut Ridge existed. This situation happened and existed when the developer submitted the preliminary plan stating that they will make that connection. They were telling you at that time, the planning commission in the city, that they were able to make that connection. They can't come back years later and say, oh, there's an ownership issue that they should have made us aware of at the beginning. If they would have told us that and did their due diligence, and we were aware of that, maybe we would have said, we shouldn't approve this. So again, the analogy that Clark brought up, I think is incorrect. We're not asking for them to go to property owner saying, I want 5 feet. We're asking them to do what they said they were going to do. A temporary T turnaround is by others. They are the others. There is no other. There is no other entity that's going to build it. The preliminary plan was not amended. The construction plans were approved. That doesn't trump the preliminary plan. The preliminary plan still is valid that says they are the other. They are the ones who build it. So depending on build out of this project, temporary T turnaround might be there for 20 years. You know, we just got lucky, we got a boom. So, you know, it could be years before that connection is necessary, but this is it. This is the last record plat. This is it for the development. There will be no other that builds this. It's the responsibility of the developer. The planning commission at that moment, right or wrong, allowed the T turnaround to happen. They did not make a statement, and that's why it says temporary, that it goes away. And again, nor could they have, because there was not a preliminary plan before them that was being amended. It was construction plans. So I do agree with what's being stated, that the planning commission certainly has that ability. We reached out to city council. She believes that as well. That again, they are still coming and asking for approvals for development. Now, the issue being, if you look at the north side, well, if you look at the plan, and even though it's west, but the plan is.
Mr. Debo, can I just ask a question though? I guess what throwing me off when I look at the staff report for underlying staff report is on page 3 of 4. Towards the bottom of final plat review comments. At this time, according to the construction plans for Stonegate, a temporary barricade will be placed at the end of Redwood Drive. Currently, Redwood Drive is planned to be extended to the boundary of the Stonegate development, which is also the Westminster corporate boundary. In the future, if it is determined that the future connection is to be made, it will be built by whoever desires to make this future connection. I guess when I look at that, it's kind of, and again, I don't have the benefit of having been here at this meeting, but I can understand that, you know, that interpretation is kind of giving the impression that it was potentially being indicated that it wasn't going to be built by the developer. So that's what's kind of throwing me off when I read the historical document or the context from that meeting, and again, which I didn't have the benefit of. So that's kind of I don't know if that's throwing off my other members, but that's kind of throwing me off, that I kind of thinking that the implication is it was addressed at that meeting. I don't know.
I think an error in judgment and miscalculation, again, if we're trying to get it right, and again, going to the preliminary plan, I don't think we should have agreed to that. I think we should have at that time required the connection, or at least had a much better understanding of when the connection could be completed. So I do agree, it's misleading, but be that as it may, that's still part of the preliminary plan that the developer is responsible for. And I could get into some of the issues why this is somewhat necessary as well, or with the issue why we're asking for this connection for this.
Mr. Debo, I tend to agree with you. If I were here in 2020, I would have, I don't know that I would have agreed to that. That's kind of, I don't know, I need to hear what you all think, but like, I think the connection should have been made, but I also understand the argument that's being made by the applicant.
Well, I was here, but there's not enough verbiage, because this part written in here, I don't know if that's exactly what was discussed at the meeting. We know we were putting in a temporary turnaround, but for how many years, I don't know if we knew. And it may be that, I don't think I'd be able to find notes. It's just not written up in the minutes, whether it was discussed that it could be 20 years until you can purchase the property, or, you know, whatever.
It looks to me like the planning commission already gave them approval. I mean, that's what it looks, that's what it says.
That's what your feeling is.
Yes.
Well, we approved the temporary thing, and this is certainly how it's written.
But again, that doesn't
I think it's difficult.
The planning commission's responsibility is to ensure that the preliminary plan is built out as approved by the planning commission. If if an error was made for temporary turnaround, it doesn't relieve the fact that this would not by not making this connection, this project would not be consistent with the preliminary plan.
This is not an
Condition
error.
needs approved by the preliminary plan. So I disagree that the record plat for section 4, where this happened, it trumps the preliminary plan or the need for this connection. I think that's what you have to look at, what's best for the people of the city, what meets the requirements of the preliminary plan, and what is actually safest for these residents. Having one single access point, only one, on this side, I think is unsafe. The other side, the northern side, has 6 connections to the primary roadway coming through and one outside the back to the adjacent property. That's what you guys looked at. That's what you're approving. You said, we want this many these many houses, but for safe access, the developer, again, this is the developer, said, we will make that connection. And that's how the planning commission approved it. If we erred late and allowed the temporary turnaround, I do not think that trumps the purpose and the need and the original approval to have that connection. And we are here today. This is additional 21 lots. We're going to say, we're going to allow on a single access point. Is that the smartest thing to do? I think we have the ability to fix this now.
If I may, one thing,
Okay.
there's many areas around the Westminster itself even that have well over 65 units or whatever off of one access point. Our access point's designed on today's standards, which are more modern than obviously previous standards. The connection to Redwood Drive, when you connect out there, you look at it, it doesn't meet sight distance. So it's not even, when we talked about it back in 2000, we even talked about it back originally, way back.
2020, you mean?
2020, yes. When we originally talked about it, and there were people from the community, Walnut Ridge, obviously they didn't want the connection, they didn't want the additional traffic. There's no sidewalks on those roads. Our site's designed to modern standards. So that one access point serving 65 lots occurs all over the place. And we have it. The additional connections, there's one other connection connecting to the community. The other stuff's internal, but it's also the additional 160, 180 lots, 160 lots in that section. There's 65 on one side basically, and the 200 or the 160 some on the other. So it's still a safe situation. And again, it occurs all the time. But when we see, obviously when you looked at the plat next door says, it's set up for a future road, but they didn't take it. We don't own it. I mean, I don't know how you can build it. That's what the planning commission, and we're going to have to agree to disagree on that. I know it's an approved preliminary plan. We're a next step further down on final construction plans, which we went back to the planning commission. We pleaded our case. They approved it. We said we prepared the red line based on the approval. We constructed the T turnaround. That by others is which means basically by other contract. It's not us. It's whoever in the future. That's on many construction documents that are around all over. I mean, that's a very standard term, but it by others refers to others, not others meaning the same people. That's a fact, and that's the way it was. That's the way it's always been.
Mr. Schaefer, I want
This system worked exactly the way it was supposed to work until today. There was a preliminary plan. It was reviewed and approved. It showed those access points as, Then the developer came in and said, how about changing this one, the Redwood Drive, in March 2020? On the preliminary, it was on the preliminary plan.
It still is. It still is in the preliminary plan.
This is an amendment to,
Right, it is not an amendment to a preliminary plan.
so listen, here's the staff report from the March 2020, which you read the last sentence, which I highlighted. I'll read the paragraph above it. Pursuant to city staff report dated July 5th, 2019, please note there is a pending matter regarding Redwood Drive and its connection to Woodside Drive. That's the staff report in March 2020 to the Planning Commission, telling them we've got an issue here. And what's that issue?
What paragraph are you on?
The
I'm sorry.
second paragraph on the final plant review comments.
Pursuant to the city staff report
Yeah.
dated July, you said 2020, July 5th,
Well, I
2019.
said 19, but
Yeah, okay.
please note there is a pending matter regarding Redwood Drive and its connection to Woodside Drive. A revised set of construction plans will return to the commission addressing this matter before any additional lots are approved beyond section 3. So they're telling you now it's here. That's what they're saying. They're saying now this staff report, March 2020, here we are, the pending matter, specifically the Redwood Drive connection, is now before you. And then it says it was brought to the city and county's attention. There is an ownership issue with regard to the future connection of Redwood Drive to existing Woodside Drive, right? And then it says everybody was involved in it. Andrew Gray, Barbara Matthews, subsequent to meeting, et cetera, et cetera. Last sentence of the next paragraph. In the future, if it is determined that this future connection is to be made, it will be built by whomever desires to make this future connection, not the developer. That's the staff recommendation. As a result of that, the commission's minutes, which you just looked at, said, commission background, overall staff report, consider approval of proposed final plat, provide a temporary T turnaround per the standard roadway. That's the answer. The answer is no, you don't have to make the connection. You can do a temporary turnaround. Now, Kevin's comment on temporary is interesting. Because we all know that deal with this development, and Dan, you referred to your experiences before. It is very common for the planning authorities to look at connectivity issues, which they have here, and in some cases to require they be made, and in some cases to require they be accommodated, temporary turnaround. Maybe dedicate the land, maybe label that 60-foot strip future road strip, do something where that's going to be our requirement. And then there are specific construction standards for temporary turnarounds. There's T turnarounds, and they're done so that if 5 years from now, 8 years from now, 30 years from now, there's a need for connection, that temporary turnaround will be turned into a road. So it is crystal clear that in 2020, this planning commission essentially amended the preliminary plan. Now, let me jump to another.
They did not, Clark. It's not crystal clear. There was no preliminary plan in front of them.
They took a motion in second to eliminate the turnaround. You can tell me that's not an amendment to the preliminary plan all you want.
It wasn't advertised as a preliminary plan amendment. It wasn't submitted as a preliminary plan amendment. There was no application.
Well, then somebody didn't do their job, Mark, then.
And it doesn't say not the developer.
Now, let me-
adding words. It just says whomever, I would say this desires this connection now.
Oh, you're saying that means that it's that means the developer's got to make it?
Adding, not the developer. It doesn't state, it states desire to make this future connection, not the developer.
Or
That's not the case, Clark. Clark, the developer said they would make this connection. Why was it not, why were you not aware of that issue when you presented that you would make the connection to?
because we came in and said, how about letting us not make the connection?
I'm talking about when the preliminary plan was approved initially.
I think they.
Now, let me ask you this.
Not a bad idea.
But if this is okay, this being staff comes in, when the guy comes in with his final section, maybe the roundabout's not big enough.
I mean, that's the wrong analogy.
Maybe the roundabout, maybe staff.
Let's not talk over each other. Personally, what I'm thinking here is, unfortunately, our legal counsel was not here. I think I have concerns based personally, based upon what I'm reading here, I have concerns that a decision has sort of potentially already been made regarding this. And for us to go back on that decision, I want some advice from legal counsel, because I'm not, when I read this, I read it in a manner which makes me think that this has already been decided, but I'm not an attorney. I don't know how you all feel about it, but I think before we make a ruling here, I don't know whether we maybe continue this to January to get clear legal input from our legal counsel. But I understand the point the applicant is trying to make, but I'm not an attorney.
If I may, just so back then in 2020 or whatever that date of that one meeting was, as the staff did the report to amend the final construction plans, if the preliminary plan had to be amended, why wouldn't it include it in as part of the staff report to amend it at the same time?
It's not your responsibility.
Well, I've been around on a lot of planning commissions and I've seen them remove master plan streets right down Placid Drive, Macbeth Way, the planning commissions, and they were on the master plans. They were on preliminary plans, but at the final drawing, we couldn't get the wetland permits. They didn't have control. Planning commissions took them off the project. We didn't amend the preliminary plan. We didn't amend the master plan until it came up for review again, and then they updated it. But it's certainly in the purview. I mean, the bottom line is, if the preliminary plan needed to be amended back then to make that work, why wouldn't you include it at that time?
Exactly.
But
Correct me if I'm wrong, you did, but
I agree.
a process standpoint, when you do a preliminary plan, you don't necessarily modify the preliminary plan as you're going to a final approval.
No, you don't.
No, correct me if I'm wrong on that. That's been my experience as
I'm not
well.
saying it is. I'm just saying, if it were supposed to be, why wasn't it there? It should have been included if that's what they're forcing. They're saying, right now you're hearing, well, that doesn't amend the preliminary plan. You still got to build it. We may change. I mean, there's things that you look at all kinds of projects and things change throughout the project.
Sure.
And there might be slight adjustments made.
And my personal experience and on Carroll County Planning and Zoning, you have a preliminary plan approval. But then, of course, as you go to record plat, things change. And when I approve the record plat, I'm not going back and readdressing what's on the preliminary plan. The plat supersedes the preliminary plan.
Sometimes there's even less lots.
Correct. That's from a process standpoint, that's been my experience, unless there's something inherently different of how it works in Westminster that I don't know or understand. But typically, I would get approval of my preliminary plan and then things change through the process. And then, my record plat gets recorded and my record plat might be different than the preliminary plan. Again, I apologize for this suggestion. I don't know how my other members feel. There is obviously some real debate here between the applicant and staff, and I want to make sure this is handled correctly. So my desire, again, I would really like to have some input from legal counsel. That we could talk to them, because I got some questions here.
I can't disagree with that. I feel like I could read this thing and interpret it as if we were saying it's fine to not put it in, that we want to allow the developer to keep on working, and we figured eventually someday somebody would put it in. But I don't know legally whether or not that is how it's
I really feel like I need the
placed
advice
there.
of legal counsel.
So,
I really do. I hate to say that, but that's Lindy.
well, then we would.
I don't know, to me, it looks like we approved it and I just can't see going back and changing it.
I
Is
understand.
that,
where
that why we would go to the attorney? Because we're thinking
Oh,
about changing it?
I want to I think there are some legitimate concerns
Okay,
on both sides.
all right.
And I would suggest to you that we're kind of in a realm that's beyond our expertise. That's why I would like to be able to continue to the next meeting. We'll make sure that, the city's attorney is here, that we can get legal advice.
Okay.
Because I think that if we were to choose to staff seems very adamant about wanting that connection. I can understand where they're coming from, but I want to have some discussions about the implications of that. And also my understanding when I read this report, I understand where everybody's coming from, but I feel like I need some legal expertise, which I do not have. That's what my feeling is.
Can we at least hear tonight exactly what the staff is requesting the condition be?
I think the connection to Redwood to Woodside.
That this developer, as a condition of approval of section 6, that he do what? Build it, bond it, submit construction drawings for it? What are we doing here?
I guess we'll ask staff, but I would guess all you could do would be bond the amount of work.
Well, no, I mean, what efforts have been made to obtain it? There's all kinds of, again, I think the smart thing to do here is to continue it to the next meeting.
I think they probably haven't done anything for the last year and a half because they really thought it was a non-issue from their side.
That's why we moved forward.
Correct.
So there's 20 couple
We've
lots.
spent
They
thousands
haven't
of
done
dollars to
anything.
prepare documents and build roads and move forward.
And this is gonna set us back another
And
month.
by the way, as I was saying about the roundabout where I got shouted down, okay? If we have a system where you can get a preliminary plan approved and you can come in 3 years later and have staff say, and planning commission say, you know what? We've got a different idea here today. You can't have that many lots, or that lot layout is no good. I don't like the way it looks. You know why? Because we have different members on the commission here today. If that's the system we're operating under, we don't have a system and we don't have a development community that can operate, because developers operate based on approvals. As you well know, it is not easy to get preliminary plan approval. It is a big deal. Everybody knows it's a big deal. Everybody concentrate. You're required to submit all kinds of detailed stuff. There's lots of staff reports and agency reviews. It's a huge process, and lots of money is spent on it. And the government spends lots of money reviewing it and giving comments, and the governments are very careful before they give out approvals. They look at adequate facilities, they look at road widths, they hire people, they pay them money, they review the heck out of it. And then when you get that approval, you go forward on it and spend a lot of money on it and rely on those approvals. So it is really, really, if not illegal, dangerous, maybe to have a system where you can come in on your 6th section of a 225 unit development and have somebody say, well, we're reviewing it again. And it's not based on an adequate facilities ordinance. It's not based on any extraordinary event like water and sewer moratorium. You know what it's based on? It's based on
Preliminary plan.
No, it's based on, no, you said we made an error. We made an error. It's based on, we changed our minds. And you know what the change of mind here? Look, read the staff report tonight. You know what the staff report says? Here's the reason why we changed our mind. Previously, we checked with the Westminster Police Department and the Fire Department, and they said, yeah, it'd be nice to have those connections. We rechecked with them, and I'm paraphrasing here. We rechecked with them again, and you know what they said this time? We really think it'd be great to have those connections. Did they say we need it to provide public services? There's nothing, there's no reason offered to you tonight by your staff to change this decision. And Kevin, I'm going to disagree with you here, but I get it. There's no way to read those documents I gave you and not conclude that the Planning Commission knowingly and after full consideration, without any deception, without any subterfuge, knowingly approved the removal of that connection. There's no way to
But
read
if
that.
that's the case, if the city attorney looks at it, it should be, I mean, we have to wait a month, but we should get that confirmed. And I think that's my only thought is if there's something we're not seeing because we don't have any expert on our side. Now, to answer your other question, staff didn't ask it, but I would answer it, but I would think obviously what they're looking for is 150 feet of road, is what they're, if you're saying what's the end result.
Is that what it looks like?
I'm just guessing.
Whatever it is.
I'm guessing it's 100 scale, it's about 150 feet.
About 180 feet, 150. And if I may, I'm sorry, I think it's misleading. Staff did not, the developer said they will make the connection when the preliminary plan was approved. And I agree. It takes a lot of time, a lot of research, and a lot of approvals to determine whether connection is necessary. It was determined it was. And you said you built it. And it's also misleading that we did not come to you and say, oh, there's an ownership issue, you should do a T turnaround. You requested the T turnaround. Again, we were not part of those decisions. You came to the city saying you would do something, and then you came to the city saying you can't do it because there's an ownership issue, which you should have been aware of initially. With all those studies and discussions that engineers and everybody does, you should have done your due diligence and determined then there was an ownership issue, and we would have had a discussion at the preliminary plan stage. So I think it's misleading that you're pointing to staff, that staff is doing something here. We're asking a connection to be made by the preliminary plan.
Do you think that when a developer submits a preliminary plan, do you understand that preliminary plan that's sitting right there is the subject of review and negotiation between the developer and the review agencies, right? You don't know if the developer proposed those connections. For all you know, the staff said, give us some connections. Show us which connections you can make. And then there was a discussion made. That was what we do know.
Got approved.
What we do know is that's the preliminary plan that got approved.
Well, you said we
So,
were
hold-
going to
hold-
make the connection.
I think, I understand, Mr. Depot, what you're saying is that the preliminary plan was approved with that connection. I think what Mr. Schaefer is arguing, which I'm sympathetic or understand his argument, is that when the plat was recorded for that section with the documentation that was submitted, that then supersedes the proposed preliminary plan, which I would argue with my experience that I've had is a somewhat compelling argument, because you typically do not go back and revise a preliminary plan once it's approved, because it's a preliminary plan. Your final plan, at least, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Depot, but like, you don't, when you do a final plan, that would supersede the preliminary plan if there were changes between, just like it was noted in here, there were changes to lot sizes from the preliminary plan to the final plan. Once we approve the final plan, those changes to the preliminary plan are considered accepted.
You don't go back and submit a new preliminary plan with those new lot numbers.
But let's follow, I'm sorry, let's follow that real quick. So we had a preliminary plan. At section 3 or section 4, the applicant's saying we have the ability, and the planning commission equally have the ability to amend the preliminary plan as they wanted. Why can't the planning commission equally do it with this section? If they were able to make changes to preliminary plan on section 4, why can't you equally say, this is another amendment to the preliminary plan, we want the connection back that you said you would do? I don't understand how 4 is the only time you can amend something, but any subsequent one you can't, because what happened in 4?
What's the reason?
Well, 1, 2, and 3 had the connection. So again, it's.
I think what
It gives that
I
authority. It's the
I
same
think
concept.
that, I think to me, when I look at it, the, you know, that connection was on that plat for section 4. And of course, this is the staff report for section 4, and then the minutes and the implication when you look at the staff report and the minutes from, and again, I wasn't here for this meeting, for this kind of indicate that we were, give the impression that the planning commission was fine with that road not going through. I think that is the argument that the applicant is making. And I understand that argument and where they're coming from. And I do, from a legal standpoint, I have concerns about us when we're reviewing a different section of the plan that has nothing to do with that street connection. Then as part of this approval, going back and addressing this, that's where my concern is, and hence why I would want to have some advice from legal counsel. Personally, there's two different elements here, or two different issues here, and the one I just addressed. Yes, of course, personally, regardless of what the applicant says, I would have wanted that connection. I would have wanted that connection for a variety of reasons. Just from a good planning standpoint, I would have at least wanted the applicant to demonstrate that they made a good faith effort to obtain that strip of land. I'd want documentation regarding that. I've had to do that before. That's the nature of the beast sometimes in development. But what I personally find compelling here is the argument that Planning Commission already had an opportunity to have that debate, and it was decided. And I do buy the argument that I don't want our Planning Commission to if people are relying on our decisions in good faith, feel like then we could go back. So again, this is a complex issue. I wish I could go back in my time machine and that this would have been handled differently. But I wasn't here, and we are where we are. And I understand where everybody's coming from. I know things have gotten a little bit heated here, but I understand where everybody's coming from. And I think there's I get it. And that's, again, I'm trying to get to a good place for everybody. And my only suggestion was, I think I would argue, again, I am not an attorney, if the Planning Commission was going to require that connection to Redwood as part of the approval to that other section, I would want to talk to legal counsel. I'd be blunt.
I'm sorry, we brought that up because it was the easiest. If the argument or the worry is that it should be associated with this plat, then the connection to Kent Terrace should be made prior to this approval. So we could look at Kent Terrace then, because that is a connection. Again,
That's a connection by others.
So that,
Yeah.
but again, if we can change the preliminary plan, as Clark has stated, it's capable of doing, why can't we do that? So again, it's, do we wait by others to do it, or the applicant could be?
I don't think you can do it on the initiative of the staff. I think you can do it on the initiative of the developer, and you can also turn it down. If the developer came in here and said, I'd like to amend the plan so I make this connection, you could turn it down or allow it.
Yes, Mr. Hackett, and I strongly feel like we're not, at this point in time, we're not really getting anywhere.
Correct.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. The only thing I'm asking
yes.
is, instead of waiting a month, but obviously you can talk to the legal counsel tomorrow and get your answer. The
Yeah.
question is can we get something conditioned upon that answer? If it's the answer that benefits you, then we're not going anywhere. We'll have to wait a month or whatever. But if it benefits us and it's clear, then why can't we be approved?
Well, the problem, Mr. Hackett, I guess would be that I think it would be a discussion that Planning Commission would want to have with, it's not just one person, because I as a body, we need to have that discussion. From a timetable standpoint, how is this, having been out there, within the past couple of weeks. You guys still have a lot of work going on there that has to do with the other sections. How is this at this point in time, if we're coming back in January, how is this holding you up from your standpoint?
Recording the lots and transferring the lot transfers from the developer to the builder. That and the builder getting back into sequence. Some of the stuff is governed by water allocations and so on, so permits. But I think that, it's going along. All we're asking is is there a way to do it to move on sooner than later as far as waiting a month, or can we get an answer sooner than?
The answer is we're not really sure.
It's a question, that's all.
I understand where you're coming from. I totally get that. And I would also suggest that I'm frustrated that we do not have legal counsel here, but I am where I am. Okay. Because it's the very reason that sometimes you have technical issues like this that are important to have input on. So again, I'm just one person here. I'm just one member. What do you all? Someone can make a motion.
Do you feel strongly about having the attorney weigh in? I know he does. How do you feel?
Well, we kind of go back and forth. I see what I read. I was at the meeting. I could say what I think everyone was thinking about that meeting, but I'm not. My memory is not going to be clear unless I have notes on a piece of paper or if I hear the recording. Okay, as far as what exactly was discussed there, but when you read, the only thing that would change would change this, that this isn't clear. That's pretty clear to me as to how the staff wrote it. Okay, so if the staff could have written it better, have written it differently, then I might have could say we approved something different. When you see how it was written, it's hard to say that's what we voted on because we didn't say anything else.
So
we allowed the temporary thing in there.
So
I don't, but I didn't mind hearing the council agree to that. But
do you feel like you want to hear from legal counsel, or do you want to make a decision?
Well, it's an interesting thing to hear from council, but I don't know if we need to or not. In all honesty, because I'm interested in it because something like this doesn't happen very often, where you have a.
I would argue there's a lot of technical aspects to what's going on here.
Yeah, you have a plan. It would have been built, except there's a piece of land that nobody knew wasn't available to be built on. You know what I mean? So therefore, that 180 feet can't be put in.
Lindy?
I read it that the planning commission already approved it. If both of you were, really wanted to have the attorney weigh in, I'll go along with that, but I read it that it's already been, and I don't see going back on that.
You read it as the planning commission already made that decision.
Yeah, that's how I read it.
Yeah.
Well, I spoke to the city attorney and I would say she doesn't feel that way. From my discussion, that she feels the planning commission still has the authority to do the preliminary plan to require.
Did the city attorney read?
I mentioned to her that report and.
Did she read it or not?
We didn't have time to read it. I told her what we stated in the report, what happened with section 4, being that even though these aren't directly part of 4 and that roadway, they still are serving that single access. These are still more houses on a single access road that does impact this entire section, this portion, which impacts 4 as well. So, but again, she believes that there is the authority that the planning commission has.
Maybe I'm missing something, but if we said, let's go back and make them build it, but they can't build it.
Well, that's a whole separate issue. They might be able to build it. We don't know that. My point being is, Lindy, I tend to agree with you that when I read the staff report, it says, and I'm sorry to do this, but I'm just going to do this. Pursuant to the city staff report dated July 5th, 2019. Please note that there is a pending matter regarding Redwood Drive and its connection to Woodside Drive. A revised set of construction plans will return to the commission, will return to the commission addressing this matter before any additional lots in Stonegate are approved beyond section 3. That was a quote from the July 5th, 2019 staff report. Then, unquote, we're back to the staff report from 2020. It was brought to the city and county's attention that there is an ownership issue with the future connection of Redwood Drive to existing Woodside Drive related to the parcel in unincorporated Carroll County where this connection would be located. City Administrator Barb Matthews, Deputy Director of Public Works John Dick, and the Comprehensive Planner Andrew Gray met with the developer and county staff on this issue. Okay. Subsequent to this meeting, CP&D staff reached out to the Westminster Police Department and the Westminster Volunteer Fire Department as to whether the lack of a connection of Redwood Drive to Woodside Drive would be an issue. The Westminster Police Department and Westminster Volunteer Fire Department responded that there are no apparent issues with removing the connection of Redwood Drive to Woodside Drive. However, the Westminster Volunteer Fire Department mentioned that it would be convenient to have such a connection. At this time, according to the construction plans for Stonegate section 3 through 6, a temporary barricade will be placed at the end of Redwood Drive. Currently, Redwood Drive is planned to be extended to the boundary of the Stonegate development, which is also the Westminster corporate boundary. In the future, I think this is an important line. If it is determined that this future connection is to be made, it will be built by whoever desires to make this future connection. So this is the underlying staff report that was then the discussion at the March 12, 2020 meeting, which the discussion was of this plat that involves this section, correct?
Well, it's not, you got your hand on a preliminary plan, but
Oh,
It was the plat.
plat that involves that section where Redwood is. And the minutes from that say, Chair Beaver opened, see, it was you, Kevin.
I know.
Open new business item B, Stonegate, proposed plat for section 4. Mr. Gray provided background information and a brief overview of the staff report with a recommendation that the commission consider approving the proposed final plat for Stonegate section 4 with the following conditions: provide a temporary T turnaround per the standard roadway construction details to be located on the property at the terminus of Redwood Drive, and update the construction plan for Stonegate section 3 through 6 accordingly, and any temporary barricade will need to be located on the property within the Redwood Drive right away. Chair Beaver recognized Mr. Brian Wagner on behalf of Carroll Land Services, Inc. to answer any questions from the commission. Vice Chair Aberts, or however you pronounce it, asked for clarification of what the temporary T turnaround entailed. Mr. Wagner explained that it is a road widening measure to allow vehicles to turn around at the end of the road. Mr. Depot added that it was required city detail. Vice Chair moved to approve Stonegate proposed. Commissioner Page, the motion passed unanimously. And again, I think what the argument is, and Lindy, you're seeming to say that you believe at that point in time, when the Planning Commission took that action, they approved the concept of Redwood Drive not going forward. That's what you believe. Mr. Beaver, what do you believe?
Would have been the recommended motion. Had we
Yeah,
made-
no, but with that's,
See what I mean?
yeah, recommended motion, I'm sorry. And the staff report.
Yeah, it just said about putting in a T turnaround.
Yeah, provide a temporary tree
didn't really discuss.
to be located on the property at the terminus of Redwood Drive and update construction and any temporary, yeah.
And just so you know, or at least that means, and what happened in real life after that occurred is that the improvement plans, which show all the details of how the roads are going to be built, were amended, were changed with that red line that was discussed at that.
That's red line you showed.
Yeah, that's that shows the temporary turn. So that's right now, as we sit here today, that's the improvement plan for section 6.
The developer took action and built a temporary.
And it's required to build all those improvements shown on there as shown as approved. That's where we are today.
Kevin, how do you feel about this? Mr. Bieber?
I have to agree with that.
Lindy?
Yeah,
Well, if you agree with Lindy, I don't know as much as I would.
I'd love to have answers.
I would love to have answer. I would love to have legal
Horses
counsel
out
here, but if
barn.
you agree with Lindy's interpretation, I would argue that then one might be compelled to vote tonight.
Yeah.
Because I let me state for the record, I understand what staff is saying about the desirability of the Redwood connection. Had I been here in March 2020, I might have a very passionate argument with Mr. Schaefer about the desirability of that connection and why it should be done for the benefit of Westminster. But I also am very much understanding the argument that Planning Commission took this action in 2020, and that to go back, it does sort of seem to be going back, because let's face it, the road has been built. The temporary road has been built. Why would you build a temporary road and not go all the way through?
Mr. Schaefer makes a compelling argument about not being able to build the road. And because I have a feeling if it was anything in the gray area, we may have modified the.
I can't speak to that. I can't speak to that.
We may have at any point in the motion, we could have indicated that we wanted it to be built at by them, but in particular, not by anybody, but by them, if we wanted to do that, because I'm sure it's probably in everybody's best interest to have it built. It's just a very difficult thing to, I don't know how difficult it is. They haven't really.
This is a
how
way
difficult it
sidebar,
is.
but I'll tell you what, I've been in these things before. The people in the adjoining development, they don't want it. And they were here at the preliminary plan way back saying, don't put those 225 he-hos.
I know that might be true, but I will tell you from a good planning standpoint that I don't necessarily, think that that's necessarily weighs on my mind as far as what makes sense in the long run.
No,
But the point
in
is,
the long run, it would make sense. To have
both of you believe your interpretation based upon everything that's been submitted is you feel like Planning Commission already made this decision.
Yeah, yes.
That's what you're telling me.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily disagree with you.
I don't think I would want us to be going back and changing something later after the fact. That's like I think the horse is out of the barn.
Yes. So we have talked a whole lot. Does anyone have any comments before anyone makes a motion to do anything here? Does anyone have any comments about the actual plat that's in front of us, which is on our package? Anyone had any comments or questions about what is actually in front of us? Because we've spent all this time talking about
There's a
Redwood.
connection at Kent Terrace
Yes.
that isn't
That though
by others, but
the preliminary plan does state that it would be built by others, not by the developer. I get what Mr. Debo, I guess you could make an argument that, well, we could require it now. I get that.
I think you could require that it's that this approval is subject to that by others until it's built. You can't move forward development of this section. And if by others means developer or somebody else, they need to wait. That's what we look at. It's still functioning the same way.
I understand what he's saying, Mr. Debo is saying, though, the plan does say, the preliminary plan does say that it's going to be built by others.
But it also says that they'll build the development of Redwood extension.
No, I understand that, Mr. Debo, though I think the point is that the action that was taken in 2020, I think what Ms. McNulty and Mr. Beaver are saying, and I understand where they're coming from, already ruled on that decision. Is what, correct me if I'm wrong, you're
Yeah.
saying that already has been ruled on.
Probably land issues with Kent Terrace anyway.
It's the same.
Is it the same?
Yes. Do you have, does the applicant have any comments regarding Kent Terrace?
I think we discussed it thoroughly. As far as the Kent Terrace, the land issue is the same.
That's
That's
more complicated to me, Mr.
well,
Hackett,
it
yeah.
was never, that
It was never intended
it was
to.
never intended to be built. And I grant,
By you.
I understand the Redwood Drive was intended at first preliminary plan. Things got noticed during the course of it. We came back in front of the body, the planning commission, and they went ahead and allowed us to proceed and approved it with just the temporary T turnaround and not make the connection. And we relied upon it, and then we moved forward.
Down the road, something will happen back here.
We don't know that. You just
There is a
don't.
piece of property back there that the Dolls own that is subdividable. It's not large, but it's,
Is this piece with the curb?
They're building to the property line.
You're building to the property line? Kent
we're building
Terrace?
to the property line in order to a point. We come up a little short because obviously there's a grade differential.
Right.
And you got to put your
Oh.
temporary, your
It's never gonna happen. The dogs.
It
were
won't.
distributed out to the
It
water
likelihood
source
of-
areas. So then-
I would tend to agree with Mr. Depot. Kent Terrace will,
None of these will ever happen.
yeah. If they don't happen now, they're not going to happen. I would agree
Well,
with that. But
You
anyway.
know, okay.
And you're
Well, the one down North Chandler could well
Listen,
happen, but
Jerry-
that's,
Jerry Dahl is very interested in developing her piece, but she can't because you removed her from the water and sewer master plan because you don't have any water.
Per her
And you
request.
want to extend it down
Correct.
there, and that's okay. I'm not even arguing against it.
We did not.
It is what it is.
That allows her to go
But,
well.
but she will have a very difficult time with that piece of ground. I know that.
yeah, let's not even go into that whole issue there.
Okay.
So what is your feeling regarding Kent Terrace as far as that? You know, I'm uncomfortable based upon the note on the preliminary plan requiring that connection.
That doesn't seem.
I'm uncomfortable with that.
No,
I-
if only if it was easy and it wasn't tied up with the same land, then you could trade it, but I would love to have this built, but I really think we sort of.
I think we're all sort of on the same page with the history of Redwood. Does anyone have any other comments about? I mean, the lots look fine to me. The way it's designed looks fine. I like the nice starry night. I'm supposing that is familiar for a reason. Do you have any comments about the design?
Looks fine.
Does staff have any other comments besides the roads issue, which we have thoroughly discussed? But I mean, not that you can't comment more, but does staff have any other comments regarding?
I better not.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
To see where this is going.
We discussed enough that we're ready for a motion.
I'll let you make the motion.
Make
Can you make the motion?
it. Somebody make the motion.
All right, well, we would move to, I would say it's not written out there.
Wait. Yeah, hold on.
That's fine.
It wouldn't be, we wouldn't make whatever's written down.
There's one, I think
There's one recommendation, number one, confirm all adjacent property owners are up to date.
I move the planning commission approve proposed. We have removing, you would not have this. Okay. Okay, for the sake of benefit of everybody, I'll make the motion to make sure it's clear. Okay. I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission approve proposed final plat F1880 for Stonegate Section 4, Section 6, sorry. It's been a long night. Based off the staff report provided at the December 9, 2021 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, but not subject to item 2 in the staff report, which is to provide the roadway connection from the Stonegate development to Woodside Drive. That's the motion
Yes.
that is the desire of the commission, correct? So I will put that motion on the table to succinctly describe what the will of the planning commission seems to be, and someone can second that.
I'll second it.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Okay.
Aye.
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 Unanimously approved.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for not making me come back in January, although I do love you.
Thank you for your time.
I did this for a long time. This is very stressful. Okay.
All right.
Didn't we have anything else on the agenda?
Maybe.
We have other
We may
stuff on the
have- we may
agenda.
have.
We're ready to leave. We'll leave this
Merry
people
Christmas,
just-
Happy New Year, if I don't see you guys.
Decision made on-
We'd have left you guys in here by yourself. We go, okay, we're done.
After submitting that, I'm gonna talk.
Okay.
So county updates.
It's done. That's over.
Just one.
Do you want to debate anything?
Why did you speak up about the roadway?
Perfectly.
Sorry, we need a little levity at this point.
Take it out on me, it's fine. But the county updates were just, county commissioners are hopefully going to approve the residential text and the 2 map amendments on Thursday. They had their public hearing in November. We are working on the water and sewer amendment that you guys talked about. It's with MDE for approval now. The transportation survey ended in December and the results will be presented to planning commission soon. And that's it.
Okay.
Any
Should
questions?
have put you on first. Sorry.
Mr. Depot, this might be a question for Westminster's comprehensive plan dates from when? When was that last updated?
That's a discussion we might want to have offline.
Okay, so I'm assuming that at some point in time, because normally the county and the municipality will work together on updating
We
the
do, for certain elements, transportation, water, sewer elements. we
the
work
designated
together.
growth area and all
Yeah,
that.
so we'll work together on that. Now, we did update, it came back before the planning commission, Andrew, maybe 2019.
There was the state mandated mid-cycle review of the comprehensive plan.
So we did make a couple changes, but I think at the same time, it could be argued that the planning commission just reconfirmed the previous comprehensive plan. So we have a 2019, so we are coming up in the next few years where we have through the cycle, we have to update the comprehensive plan.
Because you're supposed to do it how many years now?
6 years?
I think master plan, well, for the county, it's 10 years.
Okay.
So I would imagine it's similar
Is it 10 or
for
6? 10?
I believe it's 10.
10, okay.
10.
Yeah, the county's coming up on their.
Long time ago it was 6.
When was the last Carroll County or Westminster was 4 or 9 or?
It was a long, but then we brought it back before you, and there was a lot of discussion that a lot of the elements were still valid
Okay.
because of the economic downturn and other certain elements that we didn't get into the majority of it because it was felt it was still valid, and we added a new element. And so it was almost a review, but reapproval. So we do know we need to move into that, but that's, zoning ordinance first, and then.
And then there's also the gray area of the environs in between the no man's land, because I don't believe the county is concerned as much about that as the city, maybe. I'm
Yeah.
not sure, as I recall.
So I think we're gonna, obviously that'll be coming at some point in time, because, though it might be nice if it's a year or so from now, because we might have a better feel for water as well, which really is gonna impact our ability of what we can do.
But I would certainly think we'd reach out to the county for assistance as we go through the comprehensive plan rewrite.
Yeah. We usually, for other municipalities, I know we help with like their maps and tables. They provide the data and we make them for them. I know Westminster has more staff than most municipalities though. So.
We have a good relationship.
All right.
Anything else?
Yeah, that's it.
So for me.
No old business, any other informational item or any other staff items before we do members?
Do you have, I have a comment. if you
Andrew wanted to talk about Raising Cane. I know that was discussion.
Oh, okay,
last
sure,
week.
yeah.
I just want to say we did meet with them and he has a little bit of an update.
Great, go ahead.
There was discussion about the Xeriscape at last month's meeting. I would just like to say that we spoke about a week after that meeting with Raising Cane's, their team without any attorneys. And they were very welcoming to an understanding about the city's current water situation. And they actually resubmitted yesterday. So I just need to review their next submittal, but they were very easy to deal to work with, just like they have been in the past. So I just wanted to bring that to the commission's attention.
And quickly, the concept was that we would allow them temporarily 6 months to a year to use city water on a certain drip line. They're going to provide us information of how much water is being used. And after that year, they'll be providing a water reuse project. They've done it in other locations in Texas, out west, as you can imagine. So then we would take them off of city water for the watering of the plants. So I think this is a nice compromise and something unique that I think we could look at for other projects as we move forward, so we're not losing so much water to landscaping. So I think it was a good compromise, good discussion.
Yes.
They still like that entrance though, where they want it, don't they?
Yes, yes, they do. We gave them that, so that's fine.
Time will tell on that. It might work. Fine.
It's an easy fix. So that's how
That's right.
too. It's not complicated, not much construction. I think they have to amend that slightly.
The only comment I wanted to make, I just wanted to get some feedback because it's something that I have mentioned to council that I am certainly willing to bring back up to council again. Do you all feel like it would be beneficial for when we're in this kind of setting, particularly, it's different if we're having a work session that we're just discussing things, but when we have applicants in front of us, do you all feel like we would benefit from having legal counsel at our meetings?
We
think we could-
had it many years ago.
Is it Ross?
I-
Is Ross an attorney?
No, but he's not our attorney. I'll be honest, I really feel like at Carroll County Planning and Zoning, we had an attorney present. And I will say tonight is a prime example. I hate being in these situations where we have an applicant in front of us and we have technical questions.
Yeah.
And we got to, and I can understand from their standpoint, the aggravation of like, well, we're gonna have to have you come back in a month.
Yeah, it's not fair to them.
I feel like, well, and I'll be frank, I'm wearing my planning and zoning hat right now, not many of my fellow city council people are watching this, forgive me. I'm wearing my planning and zoning hat right now. I feel like it would be beneficial for us as a planning and zoning commission to have legal counsel present at our meetings.
I agree.
Because I think there's issues that come up. And it's been multiple times where I've been sitting in this capacity. And I'll be frank, I'm like, I wish I was at Carroll County Planning and Zoning Commission meeting where I had a legal counsel where I could say, make a motion to get advice of legal counsel. And we don't have that. And it puts us in an unfair position. And frankly, it puts staff in an unfair position because they're not attorneys either. And yet the applicant has an attorney present. So if you all are in agreements with me, I'm going to further press that issue because after a couple of meetings that we've had, I'm starting to feel very strongly about this. So
I have to say, we went through a lot of months where it would not have been necessary, but in these last 3 or 4 meetings, there have been cases, and I don't know that you can anticipate them ahead.
You can't.
And only bring them when you need them, but
you can't. So
that's probably why they discontinued it for many reasons, but we probably didn't have a lot.
I make no promises because I'm just one of 5 people. But I will say I'm going to address that issue because I feel pretty strongly about it, especially after tonight. Because this has been more than one occasion where I feel like we as a planning and zoning commission have been at a disadvantage because we have not had legal counsel here. And I also feel like it's not fair to the staff when we don't have legal counsel here and the applicant has legal counsel.
That's
So-
true.
So I'm going to pursue that. And I feel at this point in time, I feel pretty strongly about that. So anyway, so that'll be under my council comments
Do
next
we make
meeting.
a motion to adjourn?
Yes, I just wanted to get your sense. This is just a conversation. I just
I
wanted to
think
get your
you're right.
input.
I agree.
Yeah, I have no,
Yeah, okay,
you can kind of see it unfolding that way.
yes. We need that.
We could use a motion.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
All right.
Yeah.
It's seconded, we're adjourned.
Take care, everybody.
All right, Drew.
Hi, Andrew.